the three of us, Women Against Gun Violence and the Violence Prevention Greater LA, came together. We thought this is sort of like a no-brainer. We should be doing work together. This is work that matters. The thread that binds us is that we're all connected to violence in some way. Either it's a personal calling or it is a professional calling that we sort of fell into and realized that we needed to be part of this movement. So when we came to it, we said, what do we want to do? And what we really hope today is about connecting and weaving, finding that thread that binds all of us, finding ways to collaborate, and really seeing how we can move forward. Our networks, our collaboration is strong. We're here to support the work. We're here to get good legislation passed. We're here to protect the rights of victims. We're here to stand in solidarity. And so we hope that today sort of models that for the rest of you. And we're hopeful that in us coming together, that we have FaceTime with one another, that we're able to connect and grow and do some thoughtful, mindful changes in the work that needs to be done. So with that, it's our heartfelt thanks that you're here this morning, that you'll be with us. I hope for the rest of the day. We've got, like I said, we're small but mighty. We've got some heavy hitter speakers coming in to share their resident expertise and also to hear what you are doing in your communities. So with that, I'd like to invite Kylie on up to do our next piece.
Thanks. So in thinking about putting together this day, we were really thinking about one of the leading causes of death among our young people and one of the leading disruptors of our communities. It's not texting while driving, it's not addiction to our technology, it's not even obesity or lack of access to healthcare, it's violence. And violence is something that we at the VPC believe is a critical and urgent public health issue. And we've been advocating that for over 20 years. So what does it mean to talk about violence as a public health issue? It means that violence is a learned behavior, and therefore alternatives can also be learned. It also means that it's not just about the individual and individual decisions. It's also about that individual's relationships, about the community that they're in, and the larger society that they're in as well. So when we talk about addressing violence, we need to address it on all levels, not just on individual choice levels. So the other thing that it means is it means to think about violence as a disease. If you think of it like a disease, you can think of it also like, and this is where we get into the title of our day, if you think of like a mosquito that carries a malaria virus, you can address the virus itself, and you can also address the mosquito that's carrying that virus, and that mosquito is a vector that carries violence. So today we're talking about the vectors of violence, the agents of transmission, how we can think about violence, the relationships that one witnesses in the home, the interpersonal relationships, how those carry violence. We can talk about the normalization of violence on our streets and how that is an additional vector of violence. We can talk about a culture that encourages vigilantism and fear response when we come against others who are different from us. And so today we're coming together to talk about all of these issues and how they're connected and how we can work together to try to address some of these vectors that are bringing violence into our communities. So with that, we have a particular frame for the day, and I'd like to bring up Margot Bennett from Women Against Gun Violence to lead us in.
So I'd like to join my VPC partners in welcoming you to the day and extend our appreciation for your attendance. I'm Margot Bennett. I'm the Executive Director of Women Against Gun Violence. So we're all aware of the terrible tragedy in Florida with the killing of Trayvon Martin. We believe that the joining of Florida's very lax gun regulations and their vigilante law is what led to this tragedy, which we believe could have been anticipated. So we've asked our speakers to address that issue. These vigilante laws have spread throughout the United States. 20 states already have what is called, almost in Hollywood terms, Stand Your Ground, but really is just a license to shoot first, ask questions later. And so we're hopeful that our speakers, as they address the many issues of gun violence in our community, will also tie it back in to that terrible tragedy and the tragedies we think will continue should these laws go unchallenged. So thank you again. Kylie, would you like to introduce our keynote?
Fantastic. I'm so pleased to introduce Dr. Mauricio Heilbron, known possibly to some of you as Dr. Mo on K-Rock's Kevin and Bean show. He is also the chief of surgery at the Little Company of Mary Hospital in San Pedro, and he's a trauma surgeon at St. Mary's Medical Center in Long Beach. He's really a great speaker, and he speaks firsthand about the real impact of violence in our communities, and it's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Mauricio Heilbron.
Thank you. Hi guys. This is awesome to be here. Thanks for that nice intro. So, yeah, my name is Mauricio Heilbron Jr., but everybody calls me Mo for short because not a lot of people can say Mauricio. Just found that. I'm not bitter. Yeah, it's a weird name. You know, Mauricio is kind of Italian, Heilbron's kind of German, and Jose is my middle name. So I'm a junior, so I'm really mixed up. I'm actually a fifth, but that's really pretentious. I'm a general trauma and vascular surgeon and down here in Long Beach and San Pedro. I'm local, born and raised in Long Beach, born in Long Beach Memorial, had my tonsils taken out at St. Mary's. My dad's still a surgeon, and he's been in the area forever. I'm from South America, technically. My folks are from Colombia. So, yo puedo hablar español without an accent, which is really surprising to many trauma patients who start yelling at me in Spanish. They don't think I understand. But yeah, totally local. Went to undergrad at UCLA. Then I got shipped off to Omaha for medical school, which was eye-opening and cold. But then I went to Phoenix for my surgery residency, so I go from the Arctic tundra to the desert. Spent some time at the county hospital there, learned a lot of my general and trauma surgery there, but I ended up coming back home and did a vascular surgery fellowship here in LA. I've been here ever since. So, yeah, if any of you listen to K-Rock, I'm Dr. Mo on Kevin and Bean, where I talk about health stuff, and half the time it's sort of serious, and half the time it's not to be too colloquial, but things people put up their butts. Try to keep it serious. Also, if you ever flip across Discovery Health or TLC, there's a really kind of tacky reality show called Untold Stories of the ER. You'd be flipping across going, I know that somewhere. I'm in reruns. I did it 4 years ago. I'm in reruns every weekend. I got all these Facebook things. Hi, is that you? Will you be my friend? I'm involved in a lot of local charities. One of them is called the Jester and Farley Fund, which is a beautiful charity we help kids who are sick cope with their illnesses. But the way we do that is we help elementary school kids learn about charity and learn about literacy and use that to help get stuff to the kids in the hospital. I'm also involved with this kind of strange, the Hero Initiative, which is a charity that actually helps old guys and their families who used to do comic books back in the 30s and 40s and 50s, who created all this stuff but never got paid for their work. And now they're sort of forgotten. And nowadays, comic book people make bucks, but they didn't know how to spend the money. And so I volunteered years ago. I was like, I'm a comic geek, whatever. I can help out. So ever since then, I've been helping them disperse the money from a medical perspective in a more intelligent ways. And I've been talking to these old guys who don't just need somebody to talk to. They have questions about their health care, and nowadays things are so fast, nobody sits and talks anymore. I'm an involved kind of guy. I like doing stuff. I like to talk. I like to write. And years ago, I started sending unsolicited rants to my local paper, the Long Beach Press Telegram. And I did so because I was stuck in the hospital a lot. As a trauma surgeon, I'm spending the night 6 to 10 nights a month in the hospital. So between CAT scans and car accidents and whatever, I'd get upset, and it's 3 in the morning, so I'm really cranky, and send. So it became a thing, and I like to write about things that people don't normally write about in ways that aren't normally written about. So I talked about the importance of trauma center funding. Just a couple of years ago, we had the Measure B thing when they were threatening to get rid of all, which was ludicrous to me. And it was 2 in the morning, and I was really tired. So I would rant and rave about this problem, but from the perspective of a trauma surgeon. So not a lawmaker, not a politician, just me. I wrote about the bureaucratic, utter madness of Medicare, insurance companies, managed care, HMOs. I mean, trust me. Everybody knows from a patient's perspective, which I was, and so I wrote about, and from a doctor's perspective, which I am, and it's really crazy. And I can honestly tell you, as crazy as you think it is, you have no idea what happens. So, here's the thing. If we're talking about the health of our community, honestly, I think it has 3 parts. One of it is health care, but the other is the safety and protection of the members of that community. And if you talk about those 2 things, you can't get around education of that community. And once you begin a conversation in one area, it has to involve all 3. And that's the problem. This is not a discussion that you can do in a soundbite. This isn't a 30-second, 45-second clip on the news. This is a conversation. It's a long, difficult conversation. It has to be between doctors and patients and neighbors and friends and law enforcement and school administrators and big business, politicians. It takes a while. It's not going to be easy, but we have to talk, and nobody does anymore. Nobody listens either. So I appreciate you guys listening if I say that at the end. But we need to listen with compassion and open minds. Now, that's impossible nowadays. We tweet, we text. The collective attention span of this country is about the average length of a sneeze now. It's gone. So, me personally, I found a good way to communicate to my community was by writing. And if I'm being really selfish, it's really good therapy. So, something happened to me back on March 17th, 2008. And I had to write about it. And so I did. And what sort of happened was, I was sulking. It was Palm Sunday. And I was sulking in my trauma room, waiting for whatever to come in. And I was sulking because I'd missed another really important day in my 5-year-old son's life. His best friend's birthday party. They got one of those things where they have like the zookeepers, or they bring like animals and stuff, which is awesome, snakes and lizards and stuff. And so my wife emailed me a photo. Apparently, they asked the kids, who hasn't touched an animal yet? My son, being an animal lover, raised his hand because he's kind of shy. But they brought him up, told him to close his eyes, put his hands in the pocket, don't move. And then they dropped the giant tarantula on his head. Oh. I got a picture on my phone of my son with this giant hairy arachnid right here. And you can see a smile sticking out from the side. So anyway, being there all selfish and whatever, wondering why am I doing this. The phone rings in the room, and it's the ER secretary, and she says, "We got a gunshot wound to the chest." I'm like, God damn, again? It's sad that it's not that surprising. But gunshot wounds to the chest are bad. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, this isn't like we got a guy who's... I had a drunk person who was driving and texting on a bicycle. That's dumb. At least he didn't hurt anybody except for himself and ride into a parked car and whatever, but seriously. Drunk, driving, texting, bicycle. But anyway, this is not that. This is bad. So as I'm getting ready, and I've sort of got the phone in my ear, and I'm just kind of looking for my shoes. The secretary says, in a 12-year-old. That changes things. Close, hang up the phone. Now I start getting out of the room, going down the hallway, going down the ER. And in my head, I'm doing all the rehearsals, like, okay, if it's shot here, I gotta do this. And then in the back of my head, it's like, we're not a pediatric hospital. As long as you're going up the street. But if they're bringing him here, it's not good. Running down the hallway, again, doing the, okay, gotta make sure. I go into the trauma room, and it is filled to capacity. And there's doctors, and there's nurses, and there's techs, and there's policemen, and there's firemen, and there's paramedics, and it's all crowded around this little thing, this little kid. Now, the medical people are swirling around this. They're trying to find an IV, or they're sticking the little sticky pads on to try to get a vital sign, and the doctors are listening, just going, please, I want to hear a heartbeat. Please, I want something. Everybody else sort of goes up against the walls to form this like peanut gallery, because everybody is concerned and curious, but they're trying to stay out of the way. It sort of parts when they see me, and one of the ER doctors says, gunshot wound to the chest, pulses in the field. And as I hear that, the other doctor is painting the side of the chest with betadine. He's getting ready to do an ER thoracotomy. In English, an ER thoracotomy is when you flay open somebody's chest to try to stick your fingers in the holes that are there so that all the stuff you're giving them doesn't leak out. If I can stop the bleeding and put stitches and things, then I got a chance to get them upstairs and fix them proper. But I ain't going to get them upstairs unless I plug up the holes. The ER thoracotomy is sort of like the Hail Mary. That's a Hail Mary football pass. In trauma stuff, this is all we got. The ER doctor, holding the knife, says, yours, because I'm a hand surgeon. And I think the kid's dead. I know he's dead. And if he's not dead, he's unsalvageable, which is a ghastly word to use for a human being. But, if he has any hope, if he has any chance of ever walking out of the hospital, his only chance is to cut him open. And I know that if I cut him open, I'm going to tear my own heart in half. But this is what I do. I'm the guy. So I put on the gloves, I grab the knife. Well, there's hardly any skin to go through. And I'm in the chest in seconds, and this blood just pours out like some macabre waterfall. It just all over the place. I get in there, and I can see the shred in his lung, and I put my finger in a big hole in his heart. And everything that they're giving him, all the blood and the fluid is just pouring out this hole. I stick my finger in it, and it doesn't stop. So I put my other hand in, and I feel the other hole in the heart on the other side. My fingers touch. So his heart's empty, and mine just breaks. I haven't talked about this in a while. The boy's mother is brought in because somebody somewhere said it's better if the parents are there when the end is near. She sits on his right side, I'm on the left. I'm just doing something to try to get the stuff from not coming out of him into my shoes and all over the place. And she's looking at me and says, take my heart, take it out right now and put it in me. And I know that that's impossible. And she knows that's impossible, but she could not have been more serious. I'm looking at her, and I look at her in the eyes, and I see her soul that I'm just going to crush as soon as I nod my head. And I do. And that howl of unimaginable grief just shook the walls of that ER like an earthquake. So I start losing it. The anger comes up to me. I was like, God, why do we still sell guns? This goddamn country. What is the... And then I'm like, why can't this kid just go to 7-Eleven with his uncle and get a Slurpee? Why is that not even possible? You know, and then I'm off now. I'm like, okay, why are we sending our innocent kids overseas to die horribly over there when we got these merciless gangbangers who are terrorists in our community invading us here? Why can't we spend that money here? Well, that's irrational and emotional and not right, and I have a job to do, and I have to sew him up now in front of his mom. So I put the first, I made this big hole. I made this big hole. So I gotta sew it up. So I put the first stitch in, and I remember tying the knot, and I'm looking at him for the first time, and he's a little kid. He's not that much bigger than my son. And I knew I was going to start to cry right then. I'm in front of everybody, and everybody's looking at me, and I can't hide. And the tears just come spilling over my cheek, and I look her in the eye, and I just whisper, "I'm sorry." So I finish sewing him up, and I go to the doctor's area, and I start doing this meaningless paperwork, and people are trying to offer encouraging words, and nurses and doctors are coming by and putting their hand on my shoulder and whatever. And I'm done. That's it. I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm going to quit. I put my pen down. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not built for this. If I quit, I can go home. I can go home right now, and I will go home, and I will sneak quietly into my son's room, and I'm going to sit next to him. I'm going to watch him sleep. That blissful sleep that the only kids can sleep. And I'm going to watch him, and I'm going to thank him for being in my life, and I'm going to ask him to put my heart back together. But you know what? That's not reality. I can't do that. I'm working till 8 in the morning. I can't leave. And in the morning, I got my day. I got patients, and I got surgeries, and I got rounds to make. And this is not an option, but I will go home eventually. And when I go home, I know that I'm going to hear this, "Daddy!" and he's going to run, and he's going to jump in my arms, and he will never know how much that means to me. But it's that resuscitative energy that just fills me to keep me going back. That's why I'll go back the next day. So I will tell you that night, I snuck into his room, and I gave him an extra kiss goodnight. I wrote pretty much that right after this happened. I literally went to my laptop and just vomited into my laptop. Send. And the next day, or the day after, whatever, it was in the press telegram. The whole thing. The whole page. And what it did was, it started a conversation. And I'm not just talking about a conversation where people reply, "Letters to the editor," or "Oh, that's so sad," or "Oh, we need to do something about that." I got a phone call from a teacher at my old high school in Longridge. And she's a teacher that works with, at-risk kids, but it's the kids where English is a second language. They're in a bad home, whatever that means. They're kids that just don't have a lot of the stuff that other kids have. But these teachers aren't giving up on these kids, and they're using writing, specifically writing, to get better, to make something of themselves, to have hope. And this sort of course I responded, "My high school, I'm writing, this is a beautiful thing." So she said, "I need to send you this letter." And she did. And the letter began, "Hi, my name's Eric. Thank you for writing about Jose, the little boy." I knew that boy. And I like school. And every day on the way to school, they're either trying to hurt me or recruit me. And I just want to go to school. I just really like it. And he just went on to thank me about writing. So, teacher calls him back and says, "You don't understand. That kid doesn't talk to anybody. He hasn't reached out to anybody. And he wrote you." So I said, "I'm taking him out to lunch." And she said, no, you ain't. You're taking us all. I said, okay. It grew. It ended up being they took me to lunch in their cafeteria. And my cafeteria. The food was better, too. Those burritos were horrible back then, but they were much better. And it ended up being a thing. So in my library, my old library, there's now 3 classes of kids. And they want me to just talk to them. Sure. I start sharing my experiences. But then, the kids who've been writing in their journals as part of their assignments, their private thoughts start coming up. And they come up just like they am in front of you, and they open up their journal, and they start sharing, start talking. And I move off to the side. They'd never done this before. I remember the first girl got up and just started talking about when the police came in the middle of the night and took her brother. And she said, and I know my brother wasn't a good guy. He's still my brother. But that's not what she was talking about. She was talking about the noise and the lights and the fear. Another girl got up and started talking about how they deported her mom and they deported her dad, and now she's having to live with her aunt just because she wants to go to school. You know, she just wants to be here and do good stuff. There's this little tiny white guy. Oh my gosh. He told a story about how he gets beat up every day. Every day somebody pushes him or does something, and he's just like, you know, I just want to do my school. He says, I kind of want to do this. He wants to be a sports writer. Come on. You know, as these kids spoke, they started to cry. Now, come on. Tough high school teenagers in public crying? Doesn't happen. Did here. They're crying. I'm crying. Teachers are crying. Everybody's crying. I remember there was somebody who came up there. She literally started like, I can't stand up anymore. And 2 people came up and were like holding her and it's going to be okay, hugging. And she's talking and just getting it out. Here's what I saw. Black kids, white kids, Hispanic kids. All the separations are gone. For that moment, listening to each other, those separations did not exist. They had way more in common than they could have ever imagined. And for that moment, their differences were trivial, meaningless. They were just cosmetic. Being witness to that, I promise you, will alter your life, because it did mine. All because of a little conversation. And that's what, I had no idea what y'all were going to say before, but this is what I was thinking about. Only just a few weeks ago, I had another situation, and some of you might be familiar with it. Like I said, I'm not a pediatric trauma doctor. That hospital is up the street, but you might have heard in the newspaper about the little 11-year-old girl who got in a fight after school and died. That was mine, too. And I wrote about that, too. Fortunately, I'm not allowed to talk about it anymore because the powers that be in my hospital are threatening corrective action because they don't like the conversation. Different story. We'll talk about that later. But one of my points is that working in the ER, the ER is sort of where healthcare and public safety and protection and kind of education, it all kind of comes there. I mean, you see that sort of stuff all the time. So when you see that stuff all the time, almost as a coping mechanism, you start to become numb. I mean, there's this endless parade of gunshot wounds and stab wounds and drunken fights and the drunk drivers on the freeways causing pileups and the defenseless wife and the abusive husband. Just sometimes you have to turn it off. Sometimes you have to be numb, or you try to. But then we've got this whole violence against children thing. You don't go there. You don't cope. There's only anger. There's only rage. There's no trying to understand. This is wrong. There's very few things that are 100% wrong. This is wrong. these are our monsters. This is easy to put a finger on. But what do we do about violence between children? Okay, I don't have those synapses. Those things have never fired in my brain. I don't have the tools to deal with that. So, my son's 8 now. And he's beautiful, and he's sweet, and he's kind-hearted, and he's the smartest kid in the world. And I love him to death. And the world's proudest papa. But he was recently bullied. And teased, pushed, shoved. And we all know what that's about. We all know what... I know what that's like. I remember like it was yesterday. His name was Neil. Dick. Neil. Junior high. PE. It had rained a couple days ago. We're out in the playing field. The fields are dry, but there's a, you know how always is the field, there's like a dip in the middle. For some reason, there's a dip. And of course, it's a muddy ditch. And I was scrawny and teasable, and he was this Hulk. And so he pushed me over, and I'm in the mud. And then he picked me up on my ankles and drags me through like I'm just sort of like a sack of potatoes. And then the bells go off, and everybody goes inside, and I'm sitting there. I spent most of the next period sobbing in the shower of the boys' locker room, finding mud in places I never knew you could find mud. I remember that. So what do I tell my son to do? Do I tell him to stand up for himself, but not resort to violence? That's a pretty thin line for an 8-year-old. I mean, really. So, sort of what was mentioned earlier, what does our culture say? What does our community say? When I think we may send them sort of mixed messages. Our culture prides itself in winning. Our business people read Machiavelli and Sun Tzu's Art of War as if it's a model. I find that disturbing beyond belief. We're told to fight back. We're told to strike first. We're told to stand your ground. Okay? Why is being nice bad? Why is it not a goal? When did helping old ladies cross the street fall out of favor? And some of you are thinking, oh, he's over. Really? Go with me for a second. Nice guys finish. No good deed goes. Okay? This is us. It's not right. I don't think it's right. But, I wrote this down. When I was a resident at County Hospital, and we're working 120 hours a week. That's 5 years of just unimaginable misery. Well, in my file, one of my attendings said, "Too nice to ever be a surgeon." Mother effer. Too nice. Come on. We tell our kids one thing, but then again, here we are saying, yeah, well, nice guys finish last. Have we just caved? Have we just allowed ourselves to accept that as the norm? I've been told by several people over the years, and again, I finished my fellowship in 1998. You need to toughen up. You need to get thicker skin. You just need to take it better. And I'm like, after a lot of soul searching and stuff, I decided I can't do that. That's not me. And more important, I don't think it's right. I think that if you keep getting tougher and tougher skin, you're allowing yourself to be violated. You're allowing yourself to be hurt. I like my skin. My skin's fine. This is the way I am. So, as an aside, and I'm going off the script here, bullying happens all the time. And it happens in places you don't expect. Now, as a physician, I'm chief of surgery at one of the hospitals, and I was chief surgery at the other. I'm really involved in the workings of the hospital. And we have people come to our hospital that tell us what to do. And I guarantee you these people have no idea what they're doing, but they have power. They have control. And they clearly have issues because they love telling us what to do, even though there's no earthly reason for us to do it. To give you an example. I'll give you an example. Wow, am I going off script here? Right, a few minutes. Apparently there's an epidemic of wrong side surgery across the country. Ooh, we're taking off the wrong testicle, or whatever. Now, I submit to you that if you look, and it's always in the paper, it's like, oh, CNN, and the poor guy's like, it's bad. I'm with you. But let me put it to you in another way. If you look at the number of surgeries in the United States where the possibility of working on the wrong side exists, so anything that's a finger, an arm, a kidney, a foot, a testicle, a heart, anything that has two, if you look at the number of times we do those surgeries, and then look at the number of times when we actually screw up, the numbers impossibly, NASA doesn't have these numbers. The problem is every time one of them happens, it makes the news. So now they say, doctors, you suck, so you must mark the patients before you go back to surgery, and I'm okay with that. Honestly, I'm really okay with that. So we put an X. X marks the spot. Worked for pirates. Come on. These people came by and said, with their clipboards, X's could be considered crosses, and crosses could be religious symbols, so you can't put X's. Fine. What do you want us to do? Draw your incision. Draw your incision with the ink. Fine. Well, if you cut through that ink, it will leach into your skin underneath and may leave you with a permanent purple mark. I think that's a good idea. Okay. Put the word yes. Fine. Yes. Did it for a while. Did it for a year. They come back. We don't think yes is specific enough. You need to put your initials. Initials. K, M, H. Fine. Ends up, they didn't think this through because there's a certain number of physicians in the United States whose first name begins with N and their last name begins with O. So Dr. Neil Owens has a problem because he's writing no on all his patients. So they came back saying, you can go back to yes. Now mind you, every time we do it their way, they change it, and we don't have an option. And if we don't do it, they threaten us with, you don't do it your way, we'll come back and you'll get a this and you get a ding, and then you don't get your Medicare funding. If you don't get your Medicare funding, you can't admit. No. Do it our way. Fine. They went back to initials recently, and I'm really thinking about changing my name to Frank Unsworth. They bully, and they make us do stuff, and it still exists. And every time I resist, and I resist like you would not believe. Seriously. I wrote they named one of the organizations JCO, and so the day that I knew that they were rounding, I took one of those purple ink pens and wrote JCO sucks on my shirts. Because they do. And I can prove it to them, and I have in conversations that they don't know what they're doing, and every time I prove to them that they don't know what they're doing, they ask me to leave. They said, we don't need you anymore, you're excused. I was like, fine, but I'm right, and you know I'm right. They still bully us, and I don't like that. Well, anyway, back to my skin. My skin's fine. So how did I deal with this, my son Benicio? How did I deal with this bullying? Conversation. That's what it comes down to. My wife and I sat with him and said, bullying's not right, okay? And probably, the reason that they're bullying, the reason this is bullying, is he's probably just jealous. He wants what you have and he doesn't have it. Whether it's your Nintendo DS, or your hair, or your grades, or your place in line, he wants it, he doesn't have it, and this is the only way. And he's just, taking it out. And again, how do you tell an 8-year-old what to do? So, just go away. If you can walk away, just walk away. If you can ignore him, ignore him. If you can just talk to somebody else, talk to somebody else. If you see somebody else being bullied, just go up and talk to him. The bully may not even know what to do. But if it ever gets physical, leave, go to the first adult you find. There's no shame. Don't be afraid. Just go. You're not tattling, just say, listen, he pushed me. Now, I don't know if that's right or wrong, but right now, that's the best advice I can give him. But the most important part of this whole thing was that he and I were talking about it. And that's, I think, what I want him to take as he grows older. So that's kind of why we're here. That's why we do these things. I mean, that's what these summits and conferences and stuff are for. Is we're supposed to talk. And I looked at the agenda today, and I see all these like different voices from different places, and different. I mean, there's law people and police people and teacher people and activist people and all people. We're here to talk to each other and listen to each other and try to come up with a plan to make it different. You guys are nice people who are trying to do good deeds. Why wouldn't I want to be a part of this? So, I guess that's my way of summing up and saying, thank you for letting me be part of your conversation.
Wow.
Thanks.
Wow.
I know. I was going to say thank you so much. At this time, what we're going to do is break into our first breakout session. For those of you who are following, who have your things, I'm going to check mine. Track 1, all of the track 1s will be in the Tahoe room right across the lobby here. All of track 2 will be here in this room. So I'd like to invite our panelists, our Victims' Voices panelists, to come up and join us up here. And for our anti-bullying, which is the track 1 in the Tahoe room. And we'll start in, I think, give us 2 minutes to set up, and then we'll get going.
Sorry.